Lance, we have a saying on this show. We actually took it from Daniel Lacalle here. He calls it the bailout of everything. And it seems like not just this year, this really exceptional year, but even before this, we seem to do everything to avoid recessions. And a lot of people would say, well, that's great. Let's just keep trying to avoid recessions. But of course, with everything, there's pros and cons, even recessions. So what exactly are we missing out on by running away from them?
Economic recessions have been deemed by the Federal Reserve and government as bad things, right? We have to avoid them at all costs. But the reality is that recessions are part of the normal economic business cycle. And during expansions and growth that we have, we had a decade worth of economic growth, we build up excesses. These excesses are lots of debt, both personal as well as corporate, as well as government. And these recessions allow the reversion of that debt. And that helps ease the burden on the overall economy, allows people to restructure themselves in the economy. It's with corporations as an example. We've decided that corporations can't go into bankruptcy. We've got to bail out. And the reality is that bankruptcy is there for a reason, to allow indebted companies and indebted households to reset themselves so they can start their economic cycle. And the problem we've decided not to allow to occur. And in the process of that, we just continue to build up more debt, which erodes economic growth, lowers productivity. And we've written lots of articles on this. The data is very clear. And it baffles me why politicians in particular keep choosing the easy answer, which leads to long-term economic prosperity, but doesn't really solve the problem that has led to massive wealth gaps and lack of prosperity for individuals across the country.
And Daniel, you've brought up this point for us before as well, and you've talked about how we're leaving a mountain of debt for our children's generation and for our children. As individuals, do we have any control over this, or are we kind of at the mercy of what the central government will choose to do?
We do have control. The first thing that we would have to do as voters is to stop believing in the money magic tree. Doesn't exist. And to stop believing that that overcompensating with debt and with higher spending, the excesses of the present, that things are going to get better in the future. I think that people should understand that massive debt and huge bailouts of almost everything will end up creating is lower productivity growth, which means lower wages in the future for you and your children, and two, much higher debt, which means higher taxes in the future. So what people need to understand is that deficit spending and debt is not a social policy. It is actually anti-social because it drains out from the productive capacity of the economy and takes it to the non-productive part of the economy. And worst of all, it creates a worse landscape in the future for the future generations. We talked about how we get out of recessions with lower productivity growth, with lower improvement in employment, and also with lower GDP growth. And that is not a coincidence. It's the debt burden that governments present themselves as the solution to a recession when they don't have better or more information about what the economy needs. That's why the private sector needs to get the opportunities to clean up and to grow quickly.
Okay. Lance and Daniel, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for coming on. Talk soon.
Thank you.